All right, thank you, Mrs. Enrica, for meeting with me. As you know, we're doing our first data meeting. Since our intro is going to be related to informational text, I thought we'd just break down the very first one, cite strong and federal textual evidence to support analysis of what the text says explicitly as well as inferences drawn from the text. And so I just want to give like an overview of what we're going to be doing. First, we're going to just look at the standard. And we're just going to highlight like key words within the standard that scholars need to know and we need to be able to elaborate on it. And then we're actually then going to break down is like, what do scholars literally need to know to be able to fulfill that standard? And also do the same thing is what does their work actually have to show us? And we'll just list them together, and so that these two things will become an anchor chart for us, that we help prepare ourselves as we actually look at the scholar's work that I have over here. And then there will be one more step after that, but we will start with this. So, looking at the standard, just take a moment. What stands out to you? What is that we feel like we need to emphasize or kids really need to know?
Let's see, I would say, well, right off the bat, citing strong information. I think a lot of our students just pull from the text without making sure it's actually highlighting what their own argument.
Okay.
So it has to.
And I want to link that
so it
into
would be relevant. So relevant textual evidence is what I'm thinking when I see cite strong.
Okay. So that would be under a no. So. I might bounce back forward, especially when you say certain things, cite relevant textual evidence. Cool. What else?
Just in general, I think I would break down, I know it seems kind of silly, but breaking down the definitions of words for students, like what does analysis mean?
Okay.
What does inferences mean?
These, and then with inferences, the opposite, explicit,
Mm-hmm.
explicit. I can't even say the word right.
Yes.
Yeah, those are the verbs that really stood out to me. I like when you said cite strong, thorough textual evidence. To me, one of the things is to. That leads into what they're going to be doing. They're going to be analyzing explicitly stated and making inferences. Is there anything else that stands out to you that in there?
I don't think I would. I mean, those are my main things. That's what I would focus on. I'm not sure.
Same here.
What else?
Those are the ones citing textual evidence, the purpose, so they can analyze things that are directly stated and versus those are implied. All right, so what do you think kids need to know? You said one already. They need to be able to cite relevant textual evidence. What else do kids need to know to be able to do this?
They have to create like their own analysis, I would say, so their own argument.
So they need
support.
Okay.
To create their claim.
They need to know.
Their own.
Actually, I'm going to put that under show. Is they need to be able to create an argument or a claim. You said.
Yeah.
Create a claim. But here, they need to be able to know what a claim is.
Mm-hmm.
And then they also need to know what evidence and actually I'm forgetting the word I was using. They need to be able to know this, claims and evidence. Anything else?
Let's see. I don't know, like back to basics, what explicitly and what inferences mean.
I spell all this correct really quickly on the spot between there's difference between explicitly. Later on, I might go clean this up. With the word citing, the one thing I thought of is that they need to be able to know how to cite a direct quote.
And paraphrase.
What else can we come up with? Now, this one is like, it feels like I think it can go into either one. It can go into, depending on how you really define it. But I think they need to know text annotation. Like, they need to be able to see annotation and be able to understand what is this I'm looking at. But they also need to be able to show us that they can annotate.
And then are we moving on to like the show part now?
If you still have any for no, we can still definitely add to that, and we can definitely now focus more on the show. Like, what do we want to see from their writing sample?
Okay, yeah, for now, I can't think of anything else for now.
Okay.
I think like typically I would just, honestly, with a standard like that, I would probably break down, like I said, back to basics, the definition of each. But yeah, so moving on to show, so creating a claim, being able to structure, an essay. So they have to show us that they know how to write a full essay. For interims, we've just done one complete high school paragraph, where they haven't worked on the five paragraph essay structure. So showing us that they know how to write a full essay.
I put paragraph because a lot of our writing is paragraph form. Reading reconsidered, is there any time that they really have that introduced?
It's, so actual like writing, there's no, like, they have a summative writing portion, but it doesn't say like, write a complete paragraph of this.
Okay.
It's kind of,
Open-ended?
yeah.
Okay. But that, for them to really be accomplishing that we need to be able to stress this. So, okay.
Let's see. Within the paragraph, I guess we would have to show their inference. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure.
Show or make an inference.
Inference.
Oh, that bothers me so bad. I was thinking back to the structure with the essay and the paragraph.
Grammar.
Yes.
Yeah.
What, add grammar? Organized.
Grammar mechanics as went over.
Logically. So the writing has to be organized logically, grammar, which is not it, grammar. And mechanics. I feel like the kids need to be able to summarize the key points.
Make strong conclusions. Not leave their answers open-ended.
So what do you mean by that?
Like,
Not being general or vague?
like just not, yeah, not having a complete like conclusion sentence. They sometimes just stop. So having,
Conclude their thoughts?
yeah, have a conclusion within their writing, whether it be a sentence or if it's an entire paragraph, have some kind of conclusion.
I wall. Here, back to the no, a couple of the things that I had was how do they need to know how to identify key details. And then you hit it on here, strong and thorough. They need to know what is a strong and thorough. So they avoid the difference between something that's strong and thorough versus just a vague response. I'm running out of room, I'm starting to think of how to write it. Anything else you can think of on either of these categories? All this, I see typos and writing errors, and I'm just like, it's killing me. I'm definitely gonna go back and clean this up.
No, that's why if you look at my anchor charts, I type it out because I'm
Smart,
yeah.
smart.
No, not that I can think of.
We have draw conclusions, show or make an inference, structure an essay. They need to be able to annotate. They need to know MLA citation.
Oh, yes. Which is also not, a lot of them I haven't done it with my ELA classes, but I had to do it with my advisory. They were never taught MLA. So, like, back to like just being introduced to it. They have not, my freshmen were not introduced to it.
Really?
At all, yeah.
I'm surprised that they didn't have that, at least in the middle school.
Or they were like, if you had like, they didn't, I had to, because they were writing an essay for another class, and I was helping them out, and they were just typing on the document.
Like just one long paragraph? I've experienced that even with kids in the 11th and 12th grade.
I haven't, we
Try to
haven't,
address that with them.
yeah, we haven't typed with ELA, so I haven't seen their MLA format, and just in general, I know the citations, but like, just in general, the format, I don't know if, I haven't seen my sophomores attempt it yet, so hopefully soon we'll see.
One last show that we need to have them be able to do. Oh, we already got it, summarize. They need to be able to summarize. Okay, well, cool. So here's where we're gonna build our data set. And then so let's look at our scholars material. You have your exemplar, right? Of the exit ticket number 2. Okay. So I'm gonna let you read this one aloud, and let's see if it meets any of this criteria. If they show us that they're summarizing, they're using textual evidence. In this question, as you can see, it says, why is this the case? Based off the text above, I have observed, this is my experience of slavery, that whenever my condition was improved, instead of its increasing my contentment, it only increased my desire to be free. Why is this the case? Include the term mental enslavement in your response. So there's definitely from a lot of the text that you guys have read in class that day, they can pull from, but there's also right there inferences. So we know there has to be an inference. And so let's look at this. And let's rate them. Like they summarize, they make that inference, they have that conclusion. Like if they have all those components, we'll call that a 4. If they have some of them, let's look at it and then let's rate it from 1, like they have nothing, to 2, they have like a little bit, and then in between. So 3 is pretty close, just not, it's perfect. 4 is perfect. All right, so why don't you go ahead and read that one out loud and let's rank it.
Okay, so we have for the first one, Douglas never was or never paid any attention in any form of mental enslavement. It could also be them not learning to read, broke the I'm assuming the mental enslavement, which made him desire freedom.
So what is your thoughts on this when you're looking at this scholar's example compared to the exemplar?
It is,
Since you have the marker, you could actually highlight if you see like key points. Let's go ahead and highlight some of those if like we see any areas of like potential strength.
okay, so just in general, I'm gonna kind of note for myself. So Douglas wants to be free. I don't think just in general they're necessarily answering the question correctly. We do have, so this one is on target, the second portion, but this first one, I think they were just trying to use the term mental enslavement like the question asks, but it doesn't, I don't think it really correlates with what it's asking.
So the part that it does, go ahead and read that section.
The first part?
The second.
The second part, so it could also be that learning to read broke the mental enslavement which made him desire freedom.
Yeah, that one part is a good, strong
Yeah,
phrase.
that one's a little-
What did you think of that first phrase?
Yeah, that first phrase, I feel like they were just trying to use the term. It doesn't, it's not answering really the question here.
Yeah, it feels like that vagueness again, where it's like the word salad trying to get there, but yet isn't. But I did like the conclusion, so it's definitely not a 4. Would you say this is a 3 or a 2? Do you think it's close?
I would say, I would say I would say a 3, because they are adding what they needed from the text, and then they're bringing back, this is from chapter 7, so when Douglas learned to read, they're taking information from chapter 7 and bringing it all the way to chapter 10.
Okay.
So I would say a 3. They're not necessarily citing where they got it from, but they're still bringing that information from that chapter. So I would say a 3 because they remembered that from all the way.
So they did have, they were attempting to cite it,
Mm-hmm.
and then they did use that, and they made it an inference.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's put that, and this would be our 3 pile.
Same question?
Yep.
Okay, so this one, Douglas felt himself improving and wanting to be even more free because he didn't fall for the mental enslavement. So they do have what Douglas is saying. He wants to be, so his want for freedom as he gets more opportunities becomes stronger. So she does highlight that. I would say, she doesn't cite necessarily, but she is answering the question, in the sense that he is, again, the more opportunities he gains, the more he wants freedom. But I think they're also misusing mental enslavement. I think they're just trying to put that word in there because it's asking them to, but I feel like this doesn't really correlate with their answer.
So where would you rank it?
I think a 2.
That's where I was going with this one as well, because this part, honestly, I can see, I'd really like to talk with the scholar on this one, because I don't know exactly from their answer, it being so short, if they truly understand this question. And I think they could definitely have cited more evidence, some either textual evidence, they could summarize something a little bit better, cause it's just almost restating this, and then they tied that in, but I don't actually know if they understand those things. So, because they put them in the elements, I would give them a 2, but they honestly could be a 1 in their ability in this overall, so put that in the 2 category. Oh, sorry, I'm zooming. Should've made 2 copies of each of these.
No worries. This one. Okay, so this is the case because being given more than what you're used to would make a slave think they can be free. This mental enslavement would be the root cause, seeing they are told they won't be free, but they are slowly gaining more things.
What's your honest thought about this one?
I think it's pretty good, what I've seen so far.
Why do you think it's pretty good?
I would say, it's a short answer, but he's kind of introducing it, kind of restating the question, and then, well, in a way, kind of shortens it, but this is the case because, they're giving another example of what Douglas is going through in the sense of another kind of slave. So an example, other than Douglas. So he's not using Douglas alone, he's using just the concept of enslaved people breaking that mental enslavement. And then kind of what I said earlier, he's kind of, again, getting more opportunities would cause them to want to become more free, which is almost what Douglas said. So he's kind of rephrasing what Douglas said in his own way.
Okay. My first, actually, I like your explanation, because I felt like, again, this is where that vagueness comes in.
Oh, really? Okay.
Like, they're not giving us, like, what mental enslavement is. They're sharing, like, hey, you give them a little freedom. Okay, what freedom are they giving? What freedom is Douglas talking about? And how does that break this mentality?
Yeah.
And what is mental enslavement? Like, they're not going to explain that well. And so, again, they're speaking too general to know 100% if they're understanding what they're talking about. Because they're just repeating some of the similar phrases like freedom, and then slowly growing more. I'm assuming they were meaning freedom here too.
Yeah.
Again, they're repeating it, they're not bringing any real new ideas to the table. You are correct though, they do tie in, restate this within the text. So, how would you rank that before I share my thoughts?
I think I would have given it like full credit at that time. But,
see, this is where I would have driven them for more details. I would honestly give them, I think this one is stronger. Actually, this one, I'm looking back at them, I think most of these I would actually just give them 2.
Oh, really?
Now, in grading it, I would have probably given them credit, but when I'm looking at the standard, they're too general.
Okay.
I'm not seeing the level of depth. So, but I think that because this is our first data team, I think this is a good start. So I would say if you want to give it a 4, let's just put it in there for the sake.
But while grading, would you consider the next one, because they do kind of then explain mental slavery here, so they do understand the concept, but just it's not placed in this one, but it's explained here. Would you consider that or no?
I wouldn't. When I'm grading it, I wouldn't, because in this moment, when I told my scholars when I did writing, is you have to act like I don't see anything else, and I only have your text. So when it says this is the case because, this is the case of what? Like, if I started a sentence with that, I actually don't think they have a good introduction. Because they're not restating what they're actually talking about, they're just jumping right into it. Which, again, since we haven't been teaching that,
Yeah.
in any of our classes, I wouldn't actually grade that way.
Mhm.
But, that's where some of this challenge too is. But like when you go back to the structure of an essay,
Yeah.
which again, this is only a paragraph,
Yeah.
this is where that breakdown is happening in our writing, which is, that's a side standard. That's not really what this one is. We're just looking at more of content.
Okay.
So this is where, for like this scholar, I would, for me, if I was grading, I would actually put a note here,
Mhm.
and like, this is where I tell the scholars, like, hey, you really don't, you missed this part, you didn't put it in this answer.
Okay, no, that's good to know, yeah, like kind of, for me, now, like, cause I can see what they're grasping, cause this is things they learned from other teachers too, like, make sure your answer has the question within it. So I see that's what they did, but they're not bringing, like you said, this part, so that's something I have to clarify to them as well.
Good catch. Yeah, cause I just said this is the case, I'm like, case of what?
Mhm.
But you're right, they did restate that,
Mhm.
I didn't catch that one, good job.
Yeah, so, it's good to see that, for my future self.
So which one are you putting then, in 1, 2, or 3?
I'm gonna put it in, 2.
Okay, 2's right there. I think this one's gonna be fairly easy.
Okay, yeah, sweet, yeah. 1.
Include the term mental slavery.
This is an ELL scholar.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
I have observed in my experience of slavery that whenever my condition improved, instead of increasing my contentment, it only increased my desire to be free. Why is this the case?
So
It's intriguing because it is an ELL, but I'm trying to understand what
I
the
think
thought
what they were
process.
thinking, they were saying mental enslavement, and they're
Okay.
thinking it was a way of, they see mental, and they know it's like, has to do with the brain and thinking, so I'm thinking
Yeah,
they're
so they were making a connection. It's
connection,
just,
just kind of off.
yeah, and so I appreciate the scholar
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
making the effort and
Mhm.
being able to make those connections.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, put it off to the side.
All right, okay, so we have, he believes that he is a slave. He was told that from the moment he was born, which that's a 1. I think this, yeah.
Yeah, because so for this scholar in particular, what do you think is the disconnect from what he or she is sharing to what they were actually looking for in this text?
Well, I'm assuming this is that correlation. He believes, tied to mental enslavement. His experience within slavery, he was told he was a slave since birth.
Okay, so you're seeing like he's making more connections than at first we thought.
So I can see like he's pulling stuff, but it's not tying to overall what mental enslavement meant.
Mm-hmm.
But he's trying to make a connection, but he just didn't know what that meant, I believe. And he sees the experience of slavery, and he's connecting it. Well, he was told from birth that he's going to be part of the system of slavery.
So it's interesting when we're looking at going back just to our verbs and things, we're seeing a little bit of the inferencing that we're trying to make.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing a little bit of textual evidence. What area do you see where they're like missing it?
Probably the explicit part. They're not tying it to the right part of the text. So they're this is like chapter 1 that they're pulling from, and we're on chapter 10, chapter 7 and chapter 10.
I think it comes back to, and I'm gonna underline this,
Okay.
here's what I did, is that strong and thorough text evidence,
Okay.
where they're getting the connection. We're seeing that they are being able to put two together, but they're not making it a thorough connection. So it's,
Can I keep these?
sure. And then this one did not answer, so this one would be a 1.
Okay.
They might have run around. I'm hoping the best case scenario for that is they just ran out of time. Alright, so looking at this information, we have 3 scholars that were a 1, we have a 2, and we have a 3. When you, in our lessons that we're having, what do you feel like as a teacher you need to do to help them move from a 1s and 2s to a 1s to a 2 and 2s to a 3?
For this specific class, all of these are ELL scholars.
Okay.
Well, except the one that didn't finish. But the other 2 were ELL scholars, and we're missing one who's also ELL, 2 more actually, 2 more that are ELL. So I think for them, just
The exposure?
exposure, I have to start, my goal for them is printing side by side the English text and Spanish text so they can compare.
Actually, sister will say no to that.
Oh, really?
She's been cracking down on that. So
Okay.
Ozark and Ahumada, that they are no longer allowed to provide the Spanish text.
Oh, okay.
And the reason for that is the more that we give them stuff in Spanish, the less, I know we want them to be able to get the content, but it's really more in that immersion,
Mhm.
and having just someone do a little translating for them is where they're going to acquire the language better.
Okay.
It makes it rough on us in the moment,
Mhm.
but for them, like for the next 2-3 years, it is best.
Okay.
And that's why they're also stressing those yellow dictionaries
Mhm.
is more, and Ramos is like, they pound hard on that,
Mhm.
because the more they actually use it, they found the scholars who do, they acquire the language much quicker.
Okay.
But in the classroom, it is hard. It makes it another layer
Mhm.
of challenge for them. And because we haven't stressed them, the kids are, sorry,
No, it's okay, I have it.
the kids are resistant to it. So do you have copies?
Oh yeah, I have a lot. I started off the year, they were always on the tables, but they were hard, they were word for word, looking up words, and it was taking up the whole time. So in the end, I started translating my packets or questions for them. So they're in English, but then I translate them as I'm going.
So one thing that, like I was talking to Mayorga, like, is this is something that we talked to her about, is, cause she started the year that way, is like how, and so since first quarter, she's been in the process of taking that stuff away. Same with like the translation in class. So she's doing actually a lot less than she used to, is she emphasized like, if someone could translate, they get to write it in Spanish, so they get their thought down, and then they have them attempt to write it in English. And then you emphasize to them, I want you to focus more on this. Like, that way, they're not having to try to be overloaded with all the questions.
Okay.
Yeah, it's another challenge. Okay, but
For the other groups, so these groups are my ELL ones, so they are kind of in a special category. But the ones that are on the 2s, I would say, just, yeah, hitting the standard, kind of making sure, well, just in general, explaining what exactly I'm looking for. So when it comes to restating, making sure that you're pulling from here, not just from here. And being more explicit because these 2 were the vague ones. So these were vague, so these need to be more thorough with their answers. For this one, let's see, I guess it's the same thing. They need to have their actual, none of them really have evidence within it. They haven't pulled anything from the text, so they need to cite actual textual evidence. And I also want to push more citing rather than paraphrasing.
so more teaching them how to do a direct quote.
Yeah, direct quote rather than paraphrase.
So here's my thinking. I believe teaching them how to do direct quotes before paraphrasing is a great idea. Like, I think that is absolutely will improve their writing, because it's a little bit clearer. But we have to make sure that they're not just copying the whole sentence and then that's
absolutely.
it.
So,
Which I knew you were meaning.
yeah.
But I think it comes back to being able to show their annotation. And this is something we already talked about, is like having them be able to show it. I think you gave it some show calls on that. Is that emphasis on the annotation. can they find it in the text? Can they show you where they're finding support and having that identified, circled, starred, whatever? And then from there, after they do their writing, I think a great way to practice this would be to do show calls.
Okay.
Where it's like, hey, let's look at this question. Let's look at Susie's and say, hey, do they have textual evidence? Can you identify it? And then have them see if they can identify the textual evidence that was provided. After you talk about like the commas and quotation marks, like do they have those things? Like even if you just do one here or there, and it's like, then they be able to see some of their own writing up there. And analyzing and giving them that peer feedback that we've been talking about, I think that could be really help reinforce. Because then, when you then speak on the subject and what they didn't cover, you can then add on to is like, hey, this is actually what I'm seeing. I highlight it. This is vague because I think that you'll have more engagement in that moment. So, this is a data team.
Okay.
How this would go from here is, since we've talked about it, we've looked at examples, we looked at gaps, so we were even formulating some strategies. From here, it would be about implementing it, and then we would come back like a week later, we'll look at another exit ticket that was a similar exercise and see if they improved it. Being the break is coming, and then I'm having the baby.
You're here next week, actually. We're gonna do citing evidence for our interim practice.
Oh,
if you
cool.
wanted 2 copies for that, to see, or is that too soon? I don't know, but
What day do you plan on doing it?
those are gonna be Tuesday and Wednesday.
Okay. Let's do Tuesday. Do you think you could do like the mini lesson on like how to cite and do a? Do you think it'd be too early for a show call?
No, I think because they know what to do. They've done it before. They just have
Okay.
to like put it in practice.
Gotcha.
I think like it's back to that paraphrasing. I've actually had scholars say, "Can I just paraphrase instead of pulling from the text?"
Okay.
So I don't know what it is about it, but they know they should be able to
Well,
get something.
and then so my wife is giving. I'm actually gonna pause.
Yes, go ahead. Go
Like,
ahead.